Hey everyone, I hope all of you are doing amazing and welcome back to Isla la Pacífica, where today we are building a Galapagos Tortoise village, or actually it's going to be a Galapagos Tortoise habitat, but it's going to be set in a village of the people native to the Caribbean, or native to Isla la Pacífica in this case, which means that it's going to be a Taino or Taino village, which means that it's going to have a little bit of a sad undertone, even though it looks like a very bright and happy place. But before we get into the build, I do have to say that I do realize that today's video is a day late, but that's because whenever I get sort of back on track with my schedule, then my schedule just says nope and puts me back. So what happens this time was, this Sunday, my graphics card just decided to die while I was building actually. And you can't build a PlanetZoo without having a good working graphics card, so I had to wait for a replacement, which set me back 3 days. Not just on Isla la Pacífica, but also on Cairn al-Bashar, because I had originally intended for those 2 days, or at least for Sunday and Monday, to actually build on Cairn al-Bashar, so that Cairn al-Bashar could make a return next week. Still going to try and do that, but we will see what happens next week. So yes, some of the projects are going to be a little bit wonky with scheduling now, but that's usually the case with my scheduling. Basically as non-existent as my correct pronunciation of words. So anyway, back to what we're actually building. So the village is, as I said, a little bit happy, a little bit sad, mostly sad, but I just really like the appearance of all the buildings, just the architecture style. First of all, because it's of course completely different than the Spanish colonial Baroque architecture that the rest of Isla la Pacífica has. But also just because for some reason, with these roofs, they reminded me of the Galapagos Tortoise, or just any kind of tortoise. I do realize it doesn't look anything like it, it's just like the color and it's a little bit round. And well, the roofs are actually pointed, and the Galapagos Tortoise, or just any tortoise, isn't round or isn't pointed. It's round but not pointed. But yeah, it's the closest building that we could get that is sort of similar to the shell of a tortoise, so I'm going with that excuse. But I think from the original, version of Isla la Pacífica, I always wanted to have like a village of the people native to the Caribbean, which is a little bit sad because the Taino or Taino people are, based on what historians say, considered extinct. So this might solidify Isla la Pacífica as set in the past when the people weren't considered extinct, but it could also be as like an exhibit or like a museum style thing where they show you what was there in the past. I do realize that there are people that claim or are descendants from the Taino people, so yes, I'm just saying historians say that the culture is somewhat extinct. But anyway, I really just like how it all looks, how it's a lot more rural, a lot more just, let's just say, a lot smaller than the rest of Isla la Pacífica. Because we have the church, we have the palace, we have the big plantation, we have the village or the town that is sort of growing in the background. But yeah, this village is just a lot more like smaller and a lot more like, I don't know how to describe it. It just feels a lot more gentle, a lot more open and a lot more friendly than the rest of Isla la Pacífica so far. While the church does look inviting, most of the buildings look kind of inviting, but this village is just like completely just all of that. Which makes it actually sadder, because as you could see, the village is actually in the background or the backyard of the church, which could be considered a giant slap in the face towards the church. And we are already going with like the idea that the church and the governor are kind of like rivalries, or have a rivalry going on. So this could be like a giant slap in the face or a giant middle finger towards the church from the governor, that he wants these people to stay here, or at least keep them safe here. The church probably wants them gone or converted. So yeah, this village, or the Taino people in Isla la Pacífica, are basically caught between two fires. They're completely dependent on one person, which I think is just general life advice. Don't be completely dependent on one person. Sadly, they have to be, because let's just say these times weren't friendly to any kind of slavery. or at least any kind of people who could be used or were used as slaves. Natives were sadly among those people. Although Spain actually did abolish that kind of slavery of like the slavery of natives a lot faster than they did with the people that they shipped off from Africa. So, yay, but also, not completely right still, but you're having a small like 1% point. But anyway, so as I said, I really like this village. It's a little bit dark in undertone because it's basically caught up in between the rivalry between the church and the governor. And whenever the governor gets replaced, I think they're screwed, because then the church just gets free reign unless the next governor is of the same mind as the previous governor. But as I said, I really like the village just because, first of all, it's completely different. Also, yesterday's Speedbuild is going to be quite a lot shorter than usual, because I wanted to keep the topic to the village. I didn't want to, put multiple topics in one video, because I generally don't tend to do well with that, because I forget the second topic, and then I'm like halfway through the building of the second topic, and then I'm like, oh wait, I should talk about this. So yeah, today's video is going to be just a little bit shorter, not because of the issue with my graphics card and the delay because of that, more because I wanted to keep it to one topic. And also, some buildings are just like smaller versions of other buildings, so I thought, oh, that's maybe not that interesting. Other buildings are just like, yeah, they're just too standard. Well, not actually to the village. All of the buildings that I built in the village are completely standard, but there are 2 buildings or just a small area that I built off screen, but that's kind of similar as the buildings that I built in the harbor episode. So if you want to know what I am talking about, watch the harbor episode. But anyway, so as I said, the village is completely in the backyard of the church. It is actually separated from the town by a rainforest. This could be because the governor wants to keep the people safe. This could be because the church doesn't want to constantly be reminded of the giant middle finger that the church or the governor gives them. So yeah, there's a little bit of a separation in between the town of Isla la Pacífica and this Taino village. But I really just like how everything is sort of rounded. Well, most of the huts are rounded. There are some huts that are actually square or rectangle-ish, but most of them are round. And I just really like it, just because it sets it even more apart from the rest of Isla la Pacífica. I just, for some reason, really like it when there are buildings that are just complete opposites of each other. Because the rest of Isla la Pacífica is somewhat structured, and then this village is just, I would say, beautiful chaos. It's like everything is built where the people wanted it to build and not where they were ordered to build something. I just like that. I already want to also do that. Well, I actually do that with Cairn al-Bashar, but I want to do that a little bit more. Also, yes, Cairn al-Bashar will probably make a return next week, and then Isla Pacífica will go on a week or 2 week hiatus so that I can finish things up. I hope to actually make it so that Cairn al-Bashar can return next week, because as I said, a 3-day setback, and 2 of those days I want to actually focus on Cairn al-Bashar. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of interesting times this weekend, because I wanted to, actually I am not sure if I want to make a cinematic video on Cairn al-Bashar, the Mirage Mountains phase. I don't know if I want to make a cinematic video. Maybe I will just do a tour and then we will go into the next thing. Mostly because of this like glitch that's happening with the snow on the Mirage Mountains of Cairn al-Bashar. I know I should be talking about the village, but I'm just with my head on Cairn al-Bashar right now, so you can't really stop me. Anyway, so yeah, I am considering just doing a tour of the Mirage Mountains and not a cinematic video. But you guys can let me know if you want a cinematic tour of the Mirage Mountains, or if you're fine with just having a tour of the Mirage Mountains and then we will start building the palace. I should start talking again about the village. So here is one of the buildings that is actually square/rectangle-ish. And it's actually pretty difficult for me to build smaller buildings, I found out. Because this looks just like a normal cabin in a way. It's a little bit more like, I would say natural, a little bit more like rougher materials instead of like that standard, let's just say, American cabin. Like whenever I think of cabin, for some reason I think of the United States. I don't know why. But yeah, it just reminded me of those cabins there. But that's going to be it actually for this Speedbuild. So we're going into the after video tour showing what I've built so far. So we're back for the after video tour showing what I've built so far. And you will probably already realize that we are not in the village. We are actually still on the, or in the town of Isla la Pacífica, which I'm going to give a different name because I think having the town have the same name as the island is a little bit of a cop-out, even though it has no impact whatsoever on the actual game. But we are actually on the edge of town. I mean, we have the wayfinding tool that I've used in every episode right front and center, or at least right in the center. But I wanted to have this small area as like a farm place or like farmland, just because Isla Pacífica, of course, can't completely be fed by just sugarcane, so I wanted to have somewhat of a different food source as well. And of course, Isla Pacífica is not large enough to have like large open farms. So all of the farms are a little bit small. And it's probably not the primary food source of Isla Pacífica. I consider that probably most of the food that goes into the town of Isla Pacífica to be imported from somewhere else. Because the island just can't really sustain large farmlands. Although they probably could, so we should move a little bit closer to the actual village. They could, perhaps, if they tore down this forest. But let's just say the whole reason that this forest is probably still here, because otherwise this would probably have been turned into farmland, is either this guy, or if we move around, that guy. So one of these, or maybe the just rivalry between both of them, is keeping this forest here. Because of course the priests of the church don't want to see what is in essence just a giant middle finger towards them. And the governor of Isla Pacífica probably wants to keep the villagers of the village safe and a little bit out of sight of the town of Isla Pacífica, so that the church isn't or doesn't have that easy opportunity of riling up the townspeople against the village. So there are two reasons that make it that this forest is still there. It is fenced off though, but anyway, this area didn't show in the speed build because I think these buildings are not interesting enough, although it was difficult because they are small. I don't really do tiny buildings. That's the biggest example of how a tiny building turned into a huge building. Actually, that other building is also an example of how a tiny building turned into a huge building, because I don't really do well with tiny buildings. I think you can already see why I'm very excited on the Palace of Khan al-Bashar, even though that's probably 2 weeks later. I still think we're only going to do a tour of the Mirage Mountains instead of also a cinematic video. But anyway, moving on from these small farmlands that I still think I'm going to make a little bit larger by including this area into the farmlands. But we should go through the jungle, and it is an absolute jungle. So the path is still a little bit visible, but even I had to remove some trees to make it easier. But anyway, so we are at the village. I also I don't know, yeah, I hear like just the sounds of the forest, just cracking wood and all of that. I tried to do this tour earlier. I failed halfway through. I just started rambling about nonsense, or like in a way just making it completely incoherent. I heard monkeys. We don't have monkeys in Isla Pacífica. Why did I hear monkeys in the forest? But anyway, moving on from that. So the village it looks just very friendly, very open. And it does kind of hide that darker undertone that these people really are completely dependent on their survival and just existence on this island by someone that they actually can't see. because I originally thought that the governor's palace was going to be visible from this area. No, their benefactor is actually so far away from them, or at least just the forest in between them is so high you can't see them. So this just gives a little bit more to that story of like their one reason of survival is just so far disattached from them they can't really see them. The people of this village don't really have any connection to the governor. The governor just wants them to stay here because the one person that can see them or that they can see, well, that person doesn't want them here. I don't know why I wanted to say don't want them, blah blah blah. Yeah, sometimes just this words just mess me up. But it's in a way just fitting with the storyline that the one person that they would probably want to get closer connections to, they can't see. The one person they want to stay away from is basically just overlooking them the whole time. Or at least looking over them the whole time. So I also just love how the dome just goes above the forest. I mean, just visually wise, this is just, I love that it just peeks over the forest and just probably intimidates the people in this village, because if that person got their way, or that group of people probably, because this is probably not just run by one person, or at least maybe run by one person but doesn't only include one person. But if the church got their way, they would probably not be here. That's kind of sad. And maybe also sad is that, well, I think by the time of Isla la Pacífica, or at least the 1700s, slavery of the natives was abolished, but it wasn't a distant memory. It, I think, was still like maybe 50 years prior, maybe even a lot early, or not earlier, a lot less years in between. So yeah, a lot of darker undertones to the village that you don't see, but I just like to imagine. So yeah, I just really like the entire village. Also, yes, the Galapagos tortoises really like this area. They, well, just, they make a lot of noise actually. They are heavy breathers. Or at least maybe you guys won't hear that, I do. But they really like this area, or their habitat. Because most of the village is their habitat. So Kane, you can't say anything. The Galapagos tortoise, compared to their size, have probably relatively the largest habitat. I think the tapirs have a smaller habitat and also a lot more of a dangerous habitat. Because even if the village goes away, probably these tortoises are safe. Well, actually you told me what actually happened around this time. Probably the tortoises aren't safe if the village goes away. But I just really like this area. Just very bright, very open, looks very friendly. A lot of the buildings are round, but then you have the odd, well, rectangular building that still reminds me of just a cabin. And I mean, it did look like this in the references, but this is just where I can't build small buildings. I just want this to be bigger. I want to add a tower. And then I end up with what overlooks us, or looks over us. But also this circle with the rocks that you see here in front of us, I think it's connected to like a ball game or just some sort of game of the Taino people, which I don't know how it's played. I just saw that it was there. This is what it sort of looks like, although probably the circle should have been bigger, but I didn't have the size or the area for that. So yeah, the circle stayed small, and I did make it so that the food for the Galapagos tortoises is just placed here in the center. Also, for some reason, the Galapagos tortoises, this also happened in your mansion, Kane, but they just love to hide in the foliage. Maybe because I also just put way too much foliage in their habitats. But yeah, you haven't moved a single bit. That one is on a mission. I mean, that's the fastest I've seen those tortoises go. But anyway, so their habitat's large. This area, I just built this as like a area for them to sleep. And well, there are some references to a building like this, or at least an open building like this. but it's primarily just built so that those tortoises have a place to be away from the rain that inevitably will fall here, because it's a rainforest biome, so it's going to rain here. I just keep it bright and sunny for these after video tours and the speed builds. I think in one of the tours or one of the speed builds I forgot and it actually rained for a short bit. So yeah, anyway, I love this area. Also, the keeper finally brings food here because I forgot to build any actual facility buildings in this area, so they have a long road to go. But now we should go to the next stop, or at least the place where the last speed build video is probably going to take place. So I already said that this area is going to be a little bit more farmland, but the next speed build will, well, probably focus on this area, which we're going through right now. But the next habitat of that speed build is going to be this lake. And it's probably going to be an alligator lake. So not a place you want to, actually let's go for a better place. But probably not a place you really want to swim, because gators or crocodiles. But yeah, I'm probably not going to change too much about the actual lake itself. So most of the next speed build will probably not focus on the habitat, which I think is not that new for me. I usually just focus on the buildings surrounding it. I mean, I only said, I think in the intro again, that what we built today was a Galapagos Tortoise habitat. But anyway, so we're going to basically end the video here. So the next speed build is going to be featuring this area and a little bit of the town. And that's going to probably be the last speed build video of Isla la Pacífica. Then Isla la Pacífica will probably do the same as Can al-Bashar and go on a 2 or 1 week hiatus before we return for like a cinematic video and a completed tour of the whole island. But I'm going to end it here, so I hope all of you have a lovely day and I will see you hopefully in the next video. Also, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more. And of course, the like button is just a great way to show you like the video and also a great way to help the videos. So anyway, have an amazing day and bye bye.